Today, November 13, marks the 5-year anniversary of enforced disappearance of a human rights defender, minority Pashtun human rights defender Idris Khattak, who was subjected to an enforced disappearance from the Swabi-Islamabad interchange for his work. That is the human rights documentation and campaign that he was engaged in for years. Khattak is someone who has worked with the likes of Open Society Foundation, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and whatnot. Khattak was also engaged in political activism to a degree. He was disappeared along with the man who was driving his car, but the driver was released after a short term disappearance of a few days. And yet Khattak was not, despite being a case of a pretty high profile, considering that there was massive international and local campaign for his release. It took 7 months of enforced disappearance for the Pakistan's military establishment and authorities and defense ministry to come forward and admit that he was in their custody, which was of course something which is not very common in the country. Once people are disappeared, either they are released without an acknowledgement or they remain disappeared without an acknowledgement. But this happened that 7 months after 7 months of disappearance, the authorities admitted to having been to having detained him, and yet there was no transparency around how he was charged, how he was picked up, and how he was treated. Eventually his family did meet him, but he was then tried for espionage under the Official Secrets Act by the military court. And the OSA has been categorized as a draconian colonial era law by human rights experts, both in Pakistan and outside Pakistan. And he was tried for espionage. However, despite the fact that he had been engaging in documentation of rights abuses for years. So it was also looked at as something which maliciously undermined and targeted the work of rights defenders, and specifically defenders who are from provinces which are considered on the periphery. He was Pashtun. So since then, in 2021, what happened that then Khattak was given 14 years of imprisonment for espionage. Again, there was rights activists and other campaigners and his family raised this case that this was grossly unfair and unjust, and his trial was unfair. And then a plea was filed in the military court against that imprisonment, and there has not been much development on that front from what we have seen reported in the press, from the documents that we've read ourselves, shared by his family and his lawyer. To speak more about this, we have with us Talia Khattak, who is Idris's youngest daughter. He has two daughters. He was a single parent to his daughters. So when he was disappeared, his first daughter is married, and she was of course left without a father, not knowing where he was. But the younger daughter, who lived with Idris, was by herself. So that is Talia, and Talia is here to speak more about the plight of her father and also the status of the case. Talia, thank you for joining us and speaking with us on this really important issue. It must be a very emotional moment for you. It's been 5 years. Can you share more with us about where and how your father is? I believe he's in Adiala Jail, which is in Rawalpindi. Can you speak about how he was treated during his enforced disappearance and the conditions in which he's being kept at the moment?
Thank you so much, first of all, for organizing this interview. And of course, as you said, that even today, it's a very difficult day for us and for the family in general. It's 5 years since we have learned how to live without my father. And every day it doesn't change. The hurt and the pain and the difficulty of just living your life without your father, it remains. Um, But where he is in Adiala right now, he was first moved to Jhelum, where we were not allowed to meet him. We weren't even informed that he was sent to prison. It was we just saw it on Twitter in a tweet, so there was no official notice. And then was moved to Adiala, where he was kept in a high security prison. And when he was in the high security prison, it was very difficult to meet him. But then eventually, they moved him to C class, and over there, it's a very crowded room with more than 70 detainees. The his health conditions have worsened over time, because first, when he was disappeared, of course, it wasn't easy, because the way he was kept, the conditions that he was kept in, they weren't easy. And there's a lot of things that happened during his disappearance that worsened his health more. He was humiliated. He was kept in inhumane conditions. And after all of this, he never got a mental checkup. He never got a physical checkup, because these things, they don't just take a toll on your physical body, they also take a toll on your mental health. But he was moved to Adiala, and over there, he never received any proper medical care. He has diabetes, he has a nerve problem, and then he has a problem with his back. All of these things, he never gets any proper care for them. For example, the jail doctors, they asked him to get an MRI, but then they never took him to get an MRI. And it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with medicines. How the family has to go every week to give him medicines, but for sometimes, for example, last month, visits were stopped in Adiala, and no one could go and give the medicines to him. So he didn't have medicines for 2 months then. So things like this, they've taken a toll on his physical, mental health. There's also he never got a COVID vaccine, because he was disappeared when COVID started, and then he was when he was moved to Adiala, he never got a COVID vaccine. He was in a crowded jail with more than 70 people in one room. Um, and he's still there. He works in a factory. He's made to go to a factory every single day, and he has to sit there for many hours, and with his back pain, it's impossible for him. He's 61 years old now, but because of all of these things, he obviously he feels much older, uh, because it's not the best conditions for him to stay in. He should be retired right now. He should not be working in a factory.
Okay. Uh, Talia, thank you for giving us some of these details. I want to ask you again about when he was disappeared. That was during Imran Khan's administration, and there was a different military regime set in place at the moment, different DJISI, different chief of army staff, and now we've been through a caretaker government, and now and it's still the same, and situation hasn't improved except that we know that he's not disappeared. So at that time, when you eventually met your father, and you used to go and see him weekly, and record and bring out documents which he was sending. He wrote about his the conditions of his disappearance, and also imprisonment. Was he subjected to beatings? Because that's what some of his initial diaries stated, right? That he had sent out to rights organizations and media.
Yes, yes. During all of these, there's a lot of we actually we he wrote a letter, and it was very difficult to read, and it kind of details of the and he didn't even write all of it, because he did not want me or my sister to read everything that happened. But he was threatened. He was he was forced to walk a lot, and then he would be blindfolded, and he was chained to like a bar for a month. He was not given proper food. He was not given any bedding. So it's just a lot of these things that I think that once you start talking about them, they're never ending.
Hmm. Yeah, and this was during the disappearance, so that's also when there was no access to any lawyer or anything, and there's uncertainty around an enforced disappearance, as we know of. So now you've also told us about the Adiala Jail, and to bring it to our viewers, notice that National Commission of Human Rights, which is an autonomous government-affiliated commission, which is not an independent human rights organization, but a government-affiliated commission, has done some work on the status of imprisonment of and the condition of prisoners in the Adiala Jail, and they came out with a very damning report which highlighted how terrible the conditions of prisoners are in that prison. So that's the place where he's kept, and now you're saying that arbitrarily it was decided that he would not be getting visits from family, so for a few months he was without medicines. So to come to the status of the appeal which was filed in the military court, um, how much do you know about it? Because he is one of those people who were, he's one of those civilians who were tried in the military courts for before military courts came into the public imagination in Pakistan since last year. We'll speak separately about that, but can you tell us about the status of the case?
Yes, so as you know, with military courts, it's so uncertain that there's not many information that you have. But we have filed an appeal in December 2021 when he was first sentenced with 14 years, and ever since then we have had a total of maybe 3 to 4 hearings, and in every hearing is at a very big distance from each other. And now again, last week we had a hearing after one whole year, and they said that they would make a decision in 2 weeks. So we are hoping that the decision will be soon, and we really hope that it's a good decision and it's in our favor and that Papa is released, because 5 years is already a huge, huge portion of his life that he has missed out on. But even if we just want the case to be out of the military court and to be in a civilian court, so at least we have that transparency, and at least we have access to him, to his so he doesn't have like this restricted access to the lawyer. um, so we really hope that it's a good decision soon, inshallah.
So his access to his lawyer is restricted as well because he was tried by the military court.
Yes, because for example, even now the lawyer, he found out the night before the hearing, um, that the hearing is going to happen. So they can visit, they can have visits, but it's still much more complicated. And for example, like the family, they cannot go to the military court and be involved in the case. We have no idea what happens.
Yeah, it's in camera, and there's no access for others except for his lawyer to be there
Yes.
during the hearing. Okay. And okay, and you're also saying that over the years there's been very little and sparse communication, and nothing is you, the family, or the lawyer are, no one is notified in time in a proper manner of any development, right? And there have
Exactly.
been very few hearings since the appeal which was filed in 2021, and there was a this duration of gap of a year, you're saying, or like that many months between two hearings now.
Yes.
Okay, so this brings me back to the what I was mentioning in terms of like the military courts being in the imagination of Pakistani public on a larger scale. That now we have political activists from the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf who are also being tried in the military courts or are in the military prisons. So since then last year we saw that it was being discussed by a big political party which is now in opposition. When Mr. Khattak was disappeared, they were in power. So and we've seen the some sort of some political politicians or politicos speaking about the imprisonment of civilians in military courts as if this is something very new and has happened for the first time last year. And while it is it's not okay for any civilian to be tried in the military courts, this was not the first time. So did you when this started last year with PTI, Did you see any political party, those who are in power or in opposition, uh, was there any solidarity? Was there any sort of a joint effort or an acknowledgement of Mr. Khattak's case?
No, not really. And as you said that it wasn't the first time that this was happening. It's happened before, and it happened to my dad. But we did not have any solidarity of that kind.
And also no response from the parties with that are in power,
No,
PMLN, PP,
no.
PPP, or others.
But we are posting an appeal to the president of Pakistan tomorrow, and me and my sister Shumaisa, we're doing a combined appeal. So I really hope that it reaches the
Authorities.
yes, reaches authorities, and that they can read it and that they can help us basically with this case.
So, do you want to speak a bit about the contents of your appeal? Do you want to share something from the appeal?
Yes, it's basically just an appeal of like a humanitarian appeal, detailing everything that we have been through, that my dad has been through, and it's just about the case and how unfair it has been on all of us, and it's a human rights violation. Um, and it's just an appeal of justice and an appeal of mercy for Papa and his family.
Okay. Thank you for speaking to us, Talia. It's not easy for families of the disappeared to speak about this issue, but they are forced into campaigning in public about it. You or the others that we have spoken to in the past, from the Baloch, the Sindhis, and others who have also been subjected to enforced disappearances themselves, like human rights activists, if they've been released. Of course, in Pakistan, when you live in Pakistan and you've been released, you can't speak about it. It's only when you have left the country you can freely speak about this matter. Hopefully that there will be a positive development in your father's case and in the cases of many others. This is it for now. Thanks to you and thanks to our viewers for watching. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.